We're breaking down the techniques that the French Laundry, a 3 Michelin star restaurant, uses to elevate shrimp bisque. As a bonus, I'll show you how to use the heads to make an amazing shrimp butter at the end. The recipes are on my website, linked in the description. To make the shrimp stock, heat your widest pan over high heat and add in 60 grams of clarified butter. To make the clarified butter, add 12 ounces of whole butter to a pot and cook it low and slow, skimming the top. Once the bubbles subside, set aside. The French Laundry has this technique where they sous vide the butter, ice it down, wash away the milk solids, and melt again. It sounds cool, but inefficient for the amount we need. Add in 1,000 grams of shrimp shells to the pot and saute until a light brown fond develops, about 5 minutes. Chef Keller recommends buying the shells from a fishmonger. I called all around San Diego and couldn't find any, so my recommendation is to save up the shells as you go. You need 26 pounds of shrimp for the shells, which is why I did a half batch. Reduce the heat to medium and add 100 grams of cold cubed butter. Cook it until the butter starts to brown, about 3 minutes. Push the shells to one side of the pot and add in 600 grams of San Marzano tomatoes with the juice, scraping the bottom to release the fond for about a minute. Then add in 240 grams carrots that are 1/2 inch thick rounds with 15 grams tarragon, cooking for 3 to 4 minutes. Add 4 quarts or about 4 liters of water and bring this to a boil. Use a wooden spoon to scrape the fond from the bottom of the pot. Turn the heat down for a low, gentle simmer, reducing the stock by 25%, which will take about 25 minutes. TK says to use a china cap to strain the shells and then use a wooden spoon to extract as much flavor as possible, but I knew that my strainer couldn't handle that. Instead, I strained the shells, then used a potato ricer to gently squeeze as much liquid from the shells as possible. Then, using 2 strainers, double strain the stock, swirling the strainer to leave behind any undesirables and discard the shells. To retain as much flavor as possible, it is important to reduce the stock as quickly as possible. Skim the stock as it reduces to remove all impurities. After 10 minutes, strain the stock into a smaller pot and continue to reduce until you have 1,500 grams, or about 1.5 quarts. Place this over an ice bath to quickly chill. The stock can be stored in the fridge for 3 days or up to 3 months in the freezer. To make the shrimp bisque, heat up a wide pot on high heat until it starts to smoke. Then add in 100 grams of clarified butter with 625 grams of shrimp shells. Cook the shells until they start to turn GBD, golden brown and delicious, about 8 minutes. Turn off the heat and deglaze the pan with 125 grams of Armagnac. I actually substitute cognac because that's what I had on hand. Use a flat wooden spoon to scrape the fond from the bottom of the pot. Then turn the heat back on to medium. Add in 210 grams of 1/2 inch diced onion, 125 grams thinly sliced carrots, 140 grams thinly sliced button mushrooms, and 90 grams sliced leeks to the pan. Then add 1,500 grams of shrimp stock and use the wooden spoon to scrape any fond from the bottom of the pan and bring this to a boil. Add in 3 sprigs thyme, 5 bay leaves, 315 grams tomatoes cut in a 1 inch dice with 315 grams cream. Bring down to a simmer over low heat and cook for 40 to 45 minutes or until the stock has reduced by 1/3. TK says to use a china cap again to strain, then use a wooden spoon to crush the shells, or you can use a potato ricer as before and squeeze out all that goodness. Discard the shells, then into a clean pot, use a sauce strainer to strain the stock, using a swirling motion to leave any undesirables behind. Return the stock to the heat and add in 50 grams of kasha curry rice. Kasha curry is a short grain rice from Japan and typically used for sushi. Cook this over high heat, skimming away the starch that floats to the top. Reduce this until you have 850 grams of bisque, which will take about 30 minutes. The recipe then says to strain the soup into a blender and blend, which was very confusing. What the hell are we even blending? Plus, it was still very loose. So I rolled the dice and added in the rice and blended, which seems like the right move. Then add in 50 grams whole butter, 5 grams lemon juice with 17.5 grams of what the French Laundry calls pre-high, with more cognac to taste, then blend. To make the pre-high, add 1 gram of xanthan gum with 50 grams of water, blending until the xanthan gum is fully hydrated. To remove all the air from the pre-high, the French Laundry uses a chamber sealer, which I don't have, but I do have a workaround. Using this cryovac container, which will hook up to most cryovac machines, you're able to pull out all of the air. Link is in the description. Blend this on high speed for 30 seconds or until the bisque is smooth. Strain this into a clean pot, tapping the strainer to leave behind any large pieces of rice. Check the seasoning and add more cognac, lemon juice, or salt if needed. Rub 20 grams of tarragon in between your hands to help release the flavor for 5 minutes. Then strain into a sauce pot. The bisque can be refrigerated for up to 3 days or frozen for up to 3 months. For the brioche croutons, remove the crust from a slice of brioche bread and cut the bread into a 1/2-inch dice. Heat 100 grams of clarified butter in a saute pan with a sprig of thyme, a smashed garlic clove with the skin on, and 50 cubes of brioche. The recipe says to cook over medium-high heat for 5 minutes, which sounded too high and for far too long. I started on medium heat, and once I saw they were starting to get too dark, I lowered to medium-low, but by this time we had taken some casualties. I would cook these on medium-low, cooking for about 3 to 4 minutes, flipping once you see brown. Once they are GBD, place them on a paper towel to absorb the excess fat and season with salt immediately. The steam coming off the bread will allow the salt to adhere. Once these cool down, you can store them in a container for up to a day. For the leeks, I couldn't find French leeks, so I decided to trim down a regular leek. The trim can be saved for the bisque or other preparations. Bring a pot of salted water to a boil and cook the leek in boiling water for 5 minutes or until tender. I decided to split this in half to fit better. Transfer to an ice bath to stop the cooking, then dry on a paper towel, slightly pressing on it to remove any excess water. Slice the leeks on a 45-degree bias, a 1/4 inch thick. Place these on a tray and coat the leeks lightly with olive oil. To plate, use 2 spoons, preferably plastic, to quenelle some caviar. The caviar I'm using is Imperia, which they are offering 15% off the entire site. Link is in the description. Wet one of the spoons, then transfer the caviar to the damp spoon and place in the center of the bowl. Place down 5 leeks, 5 croutons with small tarragon leaves on top with 5 dots of creme fraiche. Carefully pour the warmed bisque in between the caviar and the garnish. Ideally, this would be done tableside. For containing only shrimp shells, this has an amazing flavor. It's super rich, goes amazing with the caviar. I would 100% make this again, but make sure that you save up the shells in advance. Now for my favorite way to use the shrimp heads, a super flavorful shrimp butter. Heat a wide pan on high heat until it starts to lightly smoke. Add in enough oil to coat the bottom. I'm using avocado oil. Dump in the heads, placing them in a single layer. Once they start to turn GBD, about 4 minutes, flip them over and cook the other side. Add enough water to coat the bottom of the pan, and using a wooden spoon, scrape the fond up. Once the water has fully evaporated, toss these into a stand mixer with a paddle attachment and 50% by weight of softened butter. Mix this until all the heads are completely crushed, about 2 minutes. Then transfer this back into a pan on medium heat until all the water has cooked out and the shells start to fry, about 4 minutes. Strain the butter, which will help make this process less messy. Then, using a potato ricer, squeeze as much butter out of the heads as possible. Place the bowl over an ice bath and whisk the butter until it's cold. Then, place into a container. This can be stored in the freezer for up to 6 months before it will start to lose flavor. If you enjoyed this video, you should watch how the French Laundry elevates clam chowder next.